Welcome to the Grit Reapers, the podcast for aspiring online entrepreneurs that cuts through all the crap in the online business world and dishes out the raw and real truth about what it really takes to have a successful online business. No sugarcoating, no get-rich-quick schemes, just honest advice with a healthy dose of humor and hope.
We're your hosts, Gail and Candice, two online entrepreneurs who've been there, done that, and lived to tell the tale. So if you're looking for straight talk, practical tips, and the occasional reality check to get your online business moving, you're in the right place. Let's get down to business.
So welcome back to another episode of the Grit Reapers. Today we are so excited to have Nicola with us. Nicola is actually Gail's very good friend. And today's episode is one of our special kind of the human side of grit. So it's more like stories of people that have experienced something or come back from something that has required a lot of grit and determination and inner strength. And from the little bit that I've heard so far, Nicola absolutely checks all those boxes. So Nicola, thank you so much for joining us and for giving your time to be here. And I'm going to hand over to Gail because Gail, I think you would be the best person to maybe introduce Nicola and set the scene of what it is that we're going to be talking about today.
Okay, awesome. Thanks so much, Cans. And hey, Nix, how are you today?
Good, thank you.
Good. Thank you so much for joining us. So I think first what I'd like to do is just let Nicola introduce herself and just tell us, what she does kind of for a living, and then we'll go on to Nix's amazing story. You guys are just going to be blown away. So Nix, do you want to just tell us a little bit about you, what you do, and then we'll move on to your story.
Cool. So thank you so much for having me. It's a real privilege, actually, and I'm super excited to share my story and just laugh. So I'm a biokineticist by profession, and I help people with their muscle strength. So basically looking at strengthening muscles and looking at imbalances and your biomechanics and how the body moves, how the body works, what's not working, what is working, what's overworking, and trying to help people basically on their biomechanical journey. So that's my profession. I'm really passionate about it. I wake up every morning loving what I do. And then on kind of as a little side thing, I also am involved in an NGO and called Amatuba, and we work on mentoring young girls. So I have 3 young girls that I mentor in the high school space.
Oh, fantastic. So I can attest to how passionate Nix is in her career. I was telling Candice early that I am probably Nicola's worst client because when I've an injury or she's helping me, and I've had a few, and then she'll say to me, okay, 3 sets of whatever it is we're doing. And then after the first set, I look at her and I'm like, 3 sets? Really? And she's like, will you just stop complaining and just get on with it? And she's always like, she will always push you just that little bit more, but it's how you end up, rehabbing and coming right. And so this actually is a great way to lead into our story. So Nicola, and Candice and I, we are all in South Africa, for those of you who don't know. And we have a running race in South Africa called the Comrades Marathon. Now, the Comrades Marathon is like no other marathon that I think I've ever seen, in that it is so it's about anywhere between 90 and 100 kilometers, depending on the actual route for the day, for that particular day that year. Which is equating to around the 60-mile mark for those of you who, know miles better than kilometers. And so this is a real feat of human endurance. They call it the world's
ultimate human race.
Yeah, the ultimate human race. And it really is an amazing race to run. But it's quite funny because in South Africa, if people hear that you run, the first question they ask you is, have you done the Comrades Marathon? Like, they don't look at, oh, you've done a 20, you've done a half marathon or a full marathon. So the Comrades Marathon is like this event that's kind of really on most runners, not every runner, but on most runners' dreams. And that's where Nix and I, I can't even remember how we met, but we started training together for Comrades. I think maybe Nick probably one day said, oh, why don't we do the Comrades? And I was like, yeah, okay, let's get going.
I think it may have been the other way around.
Maybe,
I can believe that.
Luckily, we're too old to remember.
Remember, absolutely.
So next, do you want to just tell us maybe first of all, like what it takes to actually get to the start line? Because my first Comrades, I never got to the start line. So what it actually takes to get you to the start line, first of all.
Okay, so for Comrades, being the ultimate human race run in South Africa, you have to have a qualifying time. So in order to you can enter, but you can't register or run without a qualifying time. So your qualifying time is probably the key thing to get you into this race or this run. And you need to run a marathon distance in under 4 hours and 50 minutes, or back in those days it was 5 hours. So it varies from year to year, just depending. And so basically the start of your training is to be able to get you to, number one, run a marathon, and then number two, run a marathon in under 4 hours and 50 minutes, let's call it. And from there, you just keep building your running, I guess, your running distance, and therefore your endurance. And you just keep loading week in and week out. So it's probably, people talk about a specific kind of like you should have run 1,000 kilometers to run a Comrades Marathon. So that varies from person to person, but basically it's weekend in and weekend out, week in, week out with running.
Absolutely. So for those who looking at miles, so that's about 630 miles. In total, they say, to be ready to run the Comrades Marathon. And the other thing, of course, Nix, which you helped me with so much, is you have to be able to get to the start line injury-free. Because as you load and as you run, you pick up injuries. You often pick up injuries. I think in my first couple of years of running, I picked up more injuries. As your legs and everything gets used to it, you pick up less. But so okay, so that you can see, I think most of us start training for Comrades pretty much after the rest period of the Comrades that you've just finished. So it's almost like you train for a whole year to make it to Comrades. Okay, so next, let's just chat about it. So you're on the line of Comrades, and they play Chariots of Fire, and everybody gets these goosebumps. You're in this huge crowd. I think they have about 15,000 runners. You're in this huge crowd. Everybody has trained blood, sweat, and tears to get there. And the cock crows and everybody heads on their way. So could you just give us some insight into the actual running of the race, like how you get from kilometer 0 to kilometer 95?
And I mean, sorry, just before Nicola answers, just as a spectator, so I run, but I'm
cool. Okay.
I'm ashamed to say it or proud to say Comrades is not on my radar. I would like want to do a half marathon without my knees buckling in, but every year, I mean, I am glued to that TV and I watch Comrades, the entire day. And the thing that I often say to my husband is like, you are like struck by how are people doing this? Like, how are they running? People run for like, I think the cutoff time is it now 12 hours or 11
12
hours?
hours, yes.
12 hours, right? And I mean, when you're watching those people coming into the stadium at the end, some people are literally collapsing and they are like leopard crawling because their legs are just, it is something that has always fascinated me. Like, it's one thing to get your body ready, but like mentally on the day in the race, like how do they do it? Like how are they actually just carrying on, So when you answer, Nicola, maybe you can also talk to the mental side
of
of it.
it.
Yeah.
Okay. So you have a good point there, Candice, because the mental side of it, I think, is way, 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 way more important than the physical side of it. So if you can train your body and your joints and your muscles to get you to the start line, I think you would think like, oh, I'm quite good. I've done my 12,000 or my 1,000 Ks. I've kind of put in all the time. And you would kind of think, oh, well, I'm there, I've kind of got it. But the mental side of it is something that is completely, I think it takes one by surprise. And I often say to the patients that I treat that run Comrades, if I can see that their head space is not 100% in it, I'm like, oh, you really need to think before you go and line up on that starting line, because half or 90% of your race is actually what's happening in your head. And what you're believing and what you're thinking about and stuff like that. So for me personally, it is the most incredible race. And they don't call it the ultimate human race for nothing. The experience of standing in amongst, whether it's people because often, I don't know, in my experience, very rarely do I stand around and I know everyone around me. I've had Comrades where I've started and it's just me. And because my friends are in different batches and stuff like that. And it doesn't matter who is around you, but at that point, you all have the same goal. You're striving for the same thing. You're in the same boat. And yeah, like Gail says, when the Chariots of Fire plays, you sing the national anthem, you stand together as South Africa, as a nation. It's one of the most incredible feelings. And I think that, it's just that little like edge of inspiration that you need to get going. And so the first few Ks are very much, it's like this cloud of people and everyone's just running together. There's footsteps very close in front of you, very close to the left, very close to the right and behind you. And so you're kind of in a big bunch, and slowly the field starts to spread out. And it's basically, for me, in my headspace, I don't think of getting to Durban. Ultimately, I know that's my dream. I want to get there. But for me, it's about getting from Maritzburg or from the start to the first 10 Ks. And there's a little town or a little space that you're going to, whether it's Ashburton or Camperdown or Botha's Hill. There's all these different little hill crest. And for me, it's about going from place to place, and very often seeing familiar faces and friends on the side of the road. And I know, oh, if I get there, I'm going to see that person. And so for me, the day is made up of these little 5 or 10K runs where I run from person to person or from place to place, rather than thinking about this whole big end
goal.
Yeah.
And I must admit, like, there's also distractions along the route, because they've got aid stations and massage stations and people and stuff. And when I ran, and Nix and I were going to chat about the Comrades we ran together, it was, my thing was always just that I was never going to stop. I was never going to stop at a food table. I was never going to stop at a massage table. I was never going to stop at people. If people wanted to talk to me, they needed to walk with me. So it was always just putting one foot in front of the other. Whether I was walking, whether I was running, I was just never going to stop. I knew that if I stopped, I wouldn't make it, because you say you've got 12 hours to do it, and I do it with like 11 minutes to spare. So I do not have time for a cramp. I do not have time. So I know that is what I have to do. So yeah. Okay, so next. Let's move on to, it was my first Comrade and your second Comrade. So I never made it to my first Comrade because of injury, and I actually got sick, like every Comrades runner's worst nightmare, to get that sore throat the week before you due to start. But anyway, so Nix, and thank goodness for Nix, because Nix then helped me. She had one Comrades under her belt, so then she helped me in my preparation for the next one. So Nix, maybe I'll just take up a little bit here, and then you can tell us about your experience. So Nick and I, we always ran with the understanding that we would run together as far as possible. But if one person was feeling better, they would go ahead. Comrades is your own race. Yes, you can plan to run with people. There can be plans in place, but ultimately you have to know and be responsible for yourself. So Nix and I were doing really well We ran together. It was going well. Nix is the most encouraging person. She will get you, as I said to you, when you look at her and say, do I really have to do another set? And she says, yes. Like, that's just her as well. Like, it would be like, Nix, I'm tired. She'd be like, no, let's just get to the next lamppost. Or we've just got 1K to go to a table. Like, let's go. So she's an amazing person to run with. And so we ran well together right to halfway. And then at halfway, we had people there who were, feeding us, giving us some food. And somehow we got separated. But I knew that Nix was a little bit faster than me, actually. So we had always said, if we get separated, just carry on. Our seconds, our husbands at the time would be telling us, it's okay, I've just seen so-and-so, they put just behind you or whatever. So you kind of knew that we would catch up again. So I carried on. Nix, I'll never forget, had a little pink flower on her cap. So I actually ran backwards a little bit because coming out of the halfway, it's quite a steep hill. So running backwards a little bit, looking for Nix's hat. And I thought, you know what, I can't see her, but it's okay. Nix will catch up with me. And as we ran, we actually never got back together. So Nix, maybe you want to just pick it up from there and just tell us exactly what happened.
So as Gail's mentioned, it was my second Comrades, and I was like, well, Comrades is all about a down and an up run. So one year you run down from Maritzburg to Durban, and the year you run up from Durban up to Pietermaritzburg. So the first run that I'd done was my down, starting in Maritzburg, running to Durban. And as a Maritzburg person, you always want to finish in your hometown. So that was also the big thing on that year, was we wanted to kind of finish. We knew everyone was going to be standing on the sides of the road in Maritzburg more than what we knew in Durban. So that was the real kind of like big take home encouragement to finish this year. And so, yeah, like Gail says, we got to halfway and amongst all the people. And I thought, I'm going to run exactly what I did the year before, like done the training, took my nutrition exactly like I did the year before. What could be different? And I remember running along and starting to feel a little bit strange and wondering, this is weird. I'm not 100% sure what's happening here. Feel a little bit dizzy. I'm not hungry. I'm not thirsty. I've drunk enough. I've eaten enough. Being a biokineticist and in the health profession, I was like, no, I'm sure I've done that, right? And I just remember thinking you need to ask a paramedic. And so the next stop, which was probably around Camperdown area, I asked a paramedic. So this is like 25 plus Ks to go. And I'd just been going along, but obviously getting slower and slower and slower as the time went on. But I kept making the cutoffs. And so I kept going and I kept moving forward. So also my ultimate goal is like, always keep moving forward. No, don't stop moving. Just keep moving forward, like Gail's spoken about. We just have to keep stepping forward, whether you're walking, running, whatever it is. And so I found the paramedic, and he said to me, "You're dehydrated, 4 sachets of water." And I was like, that is strange, but I'm going to listen to you, because at this point I knew he was the person to listen to. And I took 4 sachets of water and continued running until we got to a little town called Ashburton, which is now closer to Maritzburg, so maybe 12 Ks outside of Maritzburg, or less than that in actual fact. I think it was 7 Ks to go when I found my mom. And we landed up walking up this hill, and her being an experienced Comrades runner, she said to me, "Something's really wrong here, Nick." And I said, "I know, I feel weird." And I was bent over. I knew who I was, I knew where I was, and I knew what I was doing, but I just didn't know what was happening to me. And we stopped at the medical tent at the top of this little hill with about 7 Ks to go. And all I remember was lying down there and putting up my hand. And that was the last thing I remember until waking up in ICU and being told that I hadn't finished Comrades, which I think was probably the most disappointing thing. And that I had spent the last few days, I was in ICU. And I was like, oh my word, this isn't what was meant to happen. And that I'd spent the last 5 days on a ventilator. And slowly, as I started to become more and more aware of the situation and hear the stories, being in the health profession myself, I knew that something had gone drastically wrong. And that year, yeah, I think we always thought Comrades was about a medal, but that year God had different plans, and Comrades was about a miracle for me. And definitely it set my faith in a trench that has never ever been deeper. And so from then I knew that God is real, and that there is he is real, and he's greater than we would ever know. And so that year was my miracle year for Comrades. And a week later, I landed up walking out of the ICU despite several cerebral seizures, 5 days on a ventilator, and basically going into very much an organ failure, with my sodium levels, which was the biggest cause, being way below the 100 mark. And so basically the terminology that they give it is called it's hyponatremia, or basically a waterlogged system. So you don't have enough salt in your system, and you basically overload your body with water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure, Nix, you know, just
I remember Gail coming to visit.
Yeah, just sitting
in
there listening
ICU.
to you, I've got absolute goosebumps. I've got a lump in my throat, because I remember that so clearly, bringing my medal into ICU to come and see you. And yeah, you can see I get really choked up about it. Like Nix, I'll never forget getting over the finish line that year, and phoning Mornay and saying to Mornay, "Where's Nix? I didn't see her." And he just said to me, "Gail, it's not good." And he was sitting at the hospital at that time with you. And I think that there were a number of reasons why, you know, as you say, God had other plans for you. There was a team of doctors assembled. Your doctor had assembled a team of doctors, who knew you were coming in. They were prepared for you. And so, yeah, you walked out of there, and we were just so thankful about that. But now that we're recovering from the tears, the next thing that I think is just going to blow everybody away. So after literally dying, because I feel like that is exactly what you did. When you look at your sodium levels, and you know, people with those levels of sodium just don't survive. Can you tell us what you then went on, and what you have done since you nearly died doing the ultimate human race?
Okay, so I think waking up in ICU, realizing the miracle, I think that was when I realized, okay, there's still lots for me to do in life, and I can't just be like this. So, and hearing the stories, like, because obviously I knew nothing. So the stories that Gail shares, and doctor friends of mine shared, and family shared, I'm all like, oh my word, wow. And so burning in my heart from the first step I took out of that hospital, was the fact that I knew that I would be back. I'm a never say never kind of person. So even with my patients, when they come in and they say to me, I want to do this, I want to do that, I'm like, okay, never say never, but let's have a look at how we're going to action this, and what steps are we going to take. And so, yeah, it was several years later. I think I ran a few 21s in between, and in South Africa we have another amazing race which Gail and I have also run together, called Two Oceans, and we run around the back of a beautiful Chapman's Peak, and it's a lovely, inspiring run, beautiful, scenic. And so I did a few of those, and I still had this little burning desire in my heart to do another Comrades. Everyone, I think, thought I was crazy, and so I decided, well, I'm going to tell very few people what my plan is. And really, I'm just going to put one foot in front of the other and take it one step at a time. So it was 2017, and I'd run the Two Oceans, and then I'd come up with a little injury. I didn't really even have an entry for Comrades. And slowly the doors started to open, and I got an entry, but I still had the injury, and I just kept plodding on, putting one foot in front of the other. And for me, I think if I look at this entire story, I'm like, I don't ever overthink. I don't ever think down the line, like, what's going to happen? You know, like, would I ever get there? I just kind of think about today. Am I getting up? Am I doing what I need to do today? And when I get up tomorrow morning, am I stronger than I was yesterday? In whatever way, whatever little way it might be, or maybe on that day it's a significant day and I've run a 21 or whatever the case is. And so 2017 was literally a year of that, one day at a time, one foot in front of the other, ticking one little box after the other until the date came. I think it was the 9th of June. I can't remember. Comrades was usually in June. And I got to line up, much to my friends' disgust. I still hadn't told too many people because everyone was still, but a few important people that I needed to be seconds and family knew. And so, yeah, I lined up and off I went running or to the start of what was meant to be was now my third Comrades. And I remember just standing on in the start line and just being absolutely blown away by the privilege it was to be number one, alive, number two, breathing, and number three, fit enough to start this race, and just enjoying every single day of the journey that led up to this. Yeah. And that year was also an up run. So it was really a repeater to the T of my experience in 2011. And so, yeah, it was real to run through the places that I remember being kind of like bent over, remembering that I didn't feel well here. Obviously, my journey with the hypernatremia itself and understanding it as a health professional has come a long, long, long way. And I've really, dug deep to understand what actually happened, and that possibly taking on too much water as a Comrades runner, running slowly at the back, we take on a lot more water that's actually necessary. And so I changed my entire nutrition system tact and ran with my Coke and my salt. So sachets of salt are what I run with now. And very, very, very privileged and blessed to be able to finish a Comrades back in 2017.
Yay!
And then from there, that was just like, wow, okay. And so every event that I've entered, which has always felt to me like the first step in something, has just kind of been like, let's see, I'd like to do that. Let's see if it's going to happen. And just literally day by day, take it day by day. And so I ran 2018, 2019, and then post-COVID, I ran 2022. And every single one, I finished with the goal of knowing who I was, what I was doing, and that the privilege it was to actually finish a Comrades race. I'm blown away by how many people finish with this amazing time and they have no idea what actually was happening. They have no recollection. And for me, I'm like, those last 5Ks, I walk, I embrace them, I enjoy them like they may possibly never happen again. But if they do, it's a real blessing. And so, that's my Comrades journey. Really knowing what you're doing at the end of it. So
Thanks. You blow me away every time I think about what you accomplished, because I've run two Comrades and they are tough. And I think, I don't know whether I would be brave enough, having nearly died, actually be brave enough to tackle it again. And as you say, that first one, your first up run back must have been like even more difficult mentally, going through, as you say, Camperdown, Cater Ridge, Camperdown, Ashburton, Lion Park.
Ashburton.
The whole place where you were feeling. I remember being at Lion Park and Gavin saying to me, Nix is not doing so well, like we're not quite sure. But me not even realizing like the extent of it, and for you to be going down that long stretch and you're not feeling well. And as you say, 7Ks to go, like it is so tantalizingly close. But I'm very glad you had your mom with you, one, and I'm very glad that you guys went to the medical tent, because you could have gone, gone further than that medical tent, and then who knows what might have happened. And also Nix, I forgot 2 oceans. Nicola and I ran 2 oceans together. And she was the only reason I made it with 4 minutes to spare. And Nicola was the only reason, because I was moaning like a stuffed pig by the end of it. And she just kept on saying to me, well, if you're not going to run with me, then I'm going to leave you behind. And I was like, you can't leave me behind. I was cramping, but yeah. So
And she's left
Um,
out that she's done an Ironman.
Yes, and she's done an Ironman. and many other things that you were just talking about. You've just done a berg traverse and stuff like that. So I think, Nix, your love of the outdoors and you epitomize like what you help other people do. So you are so passionate about helping other people, but you also like do it, and you're out there, and it's just you're always a huge inspiration to me. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
I was actually speechless listening to the story, because I think the thing that strikes me, and why personally, like, I love hearing people's stories and just like taking something from the attitude or the approach they've taken with whatever life's given them, is that not only you've got such gratitude, which is like, that strikes me as like, not many people come out of a deeply traumatizing experience with gratitude. Like a lot, I mean, I don't know, maybe that's a generalization, but I think a lot of people just feel so traumatized and
Yes.
so victimized by something that's happened to them, that I think it's like, it is just astounding to me hearing how you woke up and you had this absolute like gratitude for this thing that sounds, I mean, we didn't really get into like how hectic what happened to you was, but I'm assuming like my brain went to, this sounds pretty hectic.
It was.
Yes, it was.
So this sounds
It was real.
pretty hectic,
Yeah.
nearly dying and 5 days being unconscious in ICU, waking up on a ventilator. I mean, that sounds like something pretty extreme must have happened. And that, and not only were you so grateful, but like that you actually went and did it again.
More time.
I mean, yeah, the thing is, I think naturally when something bad happens to us, like an instinct is to avoid that experience again. You don't want to go even near it in case it could happen
In
again.
case.
And the fact that you just had this like absolute gratitude for being alive, for having this body, being able to breathe, you went and you did it again. It is absolutely like, it is so inspiring, Nicola. It's
Thank
like,
you.
you just want to take your hat off to someone. Wow,
Thank
that
you.
is phenomenal. And I think, because my brain often goes to like, okay, this is our podcast, it's about business owners, but I think, what you said about, not only did you go back and you were like, I'm going to try this again, but that you were actually quite analytical and that you really wanted to understand what went wrong,
Yes.
So like often when Gail and I are talking of, in terms of like online business strategy, and we often speak about how it's so important, if things don't go right, you can't just like not look at it and be like, oh, that was terrible. You've got to be
Yes.
analytical. You've got to actually dive into understanding what
Yes.
went wrong, which is exactly what you did. You really researched what happened with your sodium levels. Like, it required an overhaul of your nutrition plan,
Yes.
and then you instituted those changes and tried again, which is precisely like in a much smaller scale, but kind of what we're telling people here, which is
Yes,
like,
absolutely.
you've got to be curious
Yes.
to understand so that you can then correct,
Yeah. Well, that's what I look at Comrades 2011, and I always go, it's taught me so much on so many different levels. Yes, on a nutritional level. I mean, the year after that, I was told by Comrades that you can't go and run in 2012. You're not allowed. And I was like, oh my word, okay, because if you die on us, there'll be trouble. I was like, okay. And so that year I actually worked at the Comrades Medical Tent at the end. But got an opportunity to then educate people on, or the medics on in actual fact, like, let's look past just everyone being dehydrated and actually look at maybe, because the symptoms are so kind of gray, and maybe look at overhydration as kind of something. So just really like looking at what's happened, and learning from it, because I think that's how we learn, is looking back. We
Yeah.
always live life looking forward, but we always learn looking back, and taking the positives and taking the negatives and putting them together and saying, okay, well, let's go and see what we can do. So
think
yeah,
that
I'm always grateful.
you should be an online business coach. I was just thinking this, because
Change
you're
my
coming
career.
up with such pearls of wisdom. Also, like,
Yeah.
I loved how you spoke about, like, when you start in Durban or you start in Pietermaritzburg, you don't think about the end. You think about all the little towns, the little 5Ks, 10Ks in between. And that's what we also, teach people. Yes, you know the goal, but it's a step-by-step process to get you there. So I also love
It's a
that as
cumulative,
well.
right?
It's a
Like,
cumulative.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Cumulative.
And if I can just add, like, that was the biggest thing when I was like kind of like trying to put some pen to paper on your story, which is actually quite tricky. I was like, in actual fact, like, I had to analyze, and I was like, I know what my end goal. So for Ironman, for instance, and probably our cycling journey on the Transkei, when I could barely ride a bike, Gail, was the start of. So that was like, I need to learn to ride a bike, because ultimately I'd like to do a triathlon. And so that basically, yeah, like, I'm like, okay, so I've got this kind of like goal, but I don't think about the bigger picture. I don't fixate, I guess, on the end goal.
Yeah.
It's about like working where you're at and working today, and then getting up and doing the same thing, but a little bit more tomorrow and the next day, until eventually. So when I did the Ironman, I entered in 2020, and it was COVID. So we got to train, and it got cancelled 2 weeks before COVID, so then I landed up doing it in 2021. So I had to retrain. But I think the biggest thing for me was like, I didn't fixate on the what ifs. I focused on the here and now, and was I taking the step forward that I could see needed to happen here and now, not about what could happen or what might happen or what might not happen, but actually what I can control, I guess, is what we're looking at. Like, I really focus on what we can control, and even working with my patients, really just focusing on what do we have control over, and not minimizing that, but like targeting that specific thing, and breaking it right down, coming back to that little thing that we have control of, and working on that, and going forward one step at a time from there. At the end of the day, every journey starts with the first step, one little step you take forward. Hey,
Yeah,
so
true.
you're coming to
True.
run next year, Gail?
Are you going to do Comrades next year?
I might.
Okay, well, talk to me,
yes.
because I might just do it with you.
Yes. I think we have to have another one on the cards. Come on.
I think
We've always said it.
when I come down and have coffee with you in Pietermaritzburg, we'll have to discuss.
Yes. Okay. Good idea. Good idea. I love it.
Wow. Wow, Nicola, like, I just feel incredibly privileged. And I think sometimes, even when a lot of time has passed, and we speak about events or things that have happened to us, it's still difficult to talk about them, even if we know it's over and we're fine. And so I just want to express, like, a lot of appreciation that you were willing to come and revisit that.
Thank you.
And just to share with us, I just like Gail when Nicola was like, we always live life going forward, but we learn going, looking back. I was like, oh my God, we should put that on a freaking t-shirt. Like, that is like a motto right there, So yes, so many pearls of wisdom. But I have loved listening to your story. I think you're clearly an incredibly strong woman who's just got that special stuff inside of her. And hopefully our listeners can learn something from your story that will help them, just to keep taking those small steps and setting those little milestones, not looking at I love that. I was thinking, oh my God, Nicola, tell us how you do that, because it's so much, the what ifs and how am I going to do this? And it's like, oh my God, you don't even know how to do the first thing, and you're worrying about how to do the big thing, It's a real skill right there. So thank you so much. And we'll drop, if anybody happens to live in the vicinity of Nicola and is thinking, I need to work with this woman, we will drop all of Nicola's details on how people can get
Yeah.
hold of you in
Or
the
even
show notes.
online. COVID
Yeah.
really opened up online stuff as well. So always willing to do anything over
Oh,
Zoom or,
fantastic.
yeah. So there's always
Fantastic.
options to chat. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome stuff.
Cool.
Cool, guys. We will catch you next week for another episode. Nicola, thank you again. Gail, I'll catch you next week.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Nix. It's been amazing
Thank you.
to have
Thanks
you
so
on
much for
our
having
show.
me.
Bye.